Well, I think we had a really interesting discussion earlier on with Shane Jones about, de-Maorification is, Maorification is what the Prime Minister talked about, and his desire to stamp out Maorification wherever he might find it. And though no one seems to have stamped it out in Parliamentary Services, which has got a huge Maorification program that I alerted to you last week, that goes under the guise of the name Te Rautaki a Māori, their Māori strategy. But I'll tell you what, there was some, progress and interesting technical and legal exchange took place at Parliament in recent days. And if you listen to the platform, you will be aware that there was a challenge to a new woke principle that will see all law students doing a compulsory course in Tikanga Māori, whatever that is, to become lawyers. It will be a compulsory course, along with several other compulsory courses in law, like torts and I think contract law. I don't know if they do common law. I don't have a law degree. And there were many challenges to this new compulsory tikanga course. And also to the fact that as part of this movement, and some might see it as a part of decolonisation, which we've been discussing this morning, they were going to make Tikanga Māori or Māori modules compulsory in other compulsory subject courses in a law degree. So in tort, so in contract. So not only were you going to have to do your compulsory tikanga course, but also tikanga was going to be injected into many, many other law courses as a compulsion. Quite contentious stuff. But in a very interesting move, let's let them take up the story. Joseph Mooney sits on chairs the Regulations Review Committee at Parliament. And the Regulations Review Committee, Joseph, how do they get involved in discussing or making judgment on compulsory Maori courses in law degrees?
Oh, good morning, Sean. Well, the Regulations Review Committee, I would say I'm a permanent member of it, but not the chair.
Yeah.
By convention, a member of the opposition chairs it, and actually how we get to deal with it is that a complaint is made to the committee. Although we do look at other secondary legislation to check it complies with relevant standards, etc. regularly. But if someone makes a complaint, in this case, Gary Judd, King's Counsel, made a complaint to the committee and was latterly joined by Thomas Newman. So that's how we started examining it. And actually, I should say during the period that complaint was looked at and up to and including our report back to the House on the complaint, the committee was chaired by the Honourable David Parker. The committee is now chaired by Arana Williams. Anyway, so the complaint was made.
And Gary was against all compulsory tikanga courses in all legal degrees, right?
He was correct, and we looked at that, and the committee unanimously came to the view that I think in my view the concerns were properly raised for consideration by the committee, but we did not uphold those complaints that he had made. The committee was unanimously of the view.
How did the committee justify the idea that there should be a compulsory tikanga course for lawyers in New Zealand?
Well, the Council of Legal Education is responsible for determining what needs to be taught and learnt by law students in order to pass their professional examinations in law. And for example, a number of years ago, the Council of Education decided that legal ethics should be taught, which is not strictly a sort of a subject that determines whether you're going to figure out whether people can do their contracts correctly or whether they don't understand criminal law. But tikanga is something that's increasingly expressed in legislation. It's referred to by the courts, including the Supreme Court, who in 2022...
And many people don't like that, Joseph. Many people think that that's rubbish, and it shouldn't be.
Well, they're entitled to their perspective, but the reality is that is the legal position. So lawyers do need to understand what tikanga is and what it isn't.
Well, what is
where
it?
it's expressed in law. Well, that's an ongoing debate, Sean.
Well, how can people understand something if we can't define it?
Well, that's where the courts are working on determining. But look at it, tikanga is complex, and I did say in my speech in the House last week that there needs to be some care in teaching tikanga because it's actually quite unique to individual hapu, individual iwi. They have their own forms of tikanga.
Can I just stop you there, Joseph? Can you just tell us what it is?
Well, tikanga is the customs and I guess you might say the rules of how to conduct one's behaviour and the interaction with others. And
what do you mean? It's culture or it's etiquette?
Well, you could say it's both. Look, I'm not going to.
Hang on. If we can't even define this, what the hell are we doing at making compulsory for lawyers?
Well, tikanga is, like I said, the Parliament has made a decision to include it in various pieces of legislation.
Has it?
The courts are regularly referring to tikanga, including the Supreme Court in 2022 stated that it was the first law of New Zealand. So it would be like remiss not to ensure that lawyers understand.
Who said it was the first law of New Zealand?
The Supreme Court in the 2022 case of Alice and the King.
Can they define it for us?
Well, this is part of the process of, I should say tikanga there has been a process for a very long time, like back in 1908, for example, in the Lowsby case. The courts came up with a test for incorporating tikanga into the common law, and there was a number of steps that needed to be taken to do that. The Supreme Court, did decide to overturn what are called the colonial tests in that same 2022 case. But this is a constant process of iteration, and it's important that law students coming through understand what it is and what the debates are.
Well, they can't understand what it is because no one can tell us.
Well, they can. They need, and but it is a matter for debate, and like I say, it is a difficult one because it does vary between hapu and iwi, and it's something that's probably not well understood. And I think even some iwi are concerned about law schools teaching tikanga. Say, well, whose tikanga are you teaching? Is it ours or is it another iwi's, for example? But look, just going to my
all right. But at the end of the day, so the committee decided. The separate tikanga course, that's okay. Yep, you probably need that. And
correct.
The people who set the syllabus, what is it, the Law Education Commission or something?
Council of Legal Education.
Okay, they can do that. But then you were faced with the compulsion for tikanga to be integrated into a whole lot of other compulsory courses.